All right, hello everybody. It's another installment of Nerds on Blank. This week we're doing another book at the suggestion of our special guest, Melissa, up there in the top right. I am your host this week is Ben, and then right next to her, to Missy, is Joel, and down below is Brian. Last time when we were talking about book stuff and book ideas. Me and Joel started talking about other books that we hadn't really read, and
It was a long time ago we had
it
read.
was like 2 weeks. And then Missy suggested,
Read
or
the
no,
book a long time ago.
yeah, Joel had read this book, A Discovery of Witches, and we decided that we would do the book. And Missy, being one of her favorite authors, decided that she wanted to chime in, and she's going to defend the book in front of the Council of Nerds. So, without further ado, we'll get started.
Because he's never read it, so.
Okay,
Yeah, Brian.
Is this like a trial of my like?
No, I'm speaking off the cuff.
Okay, Brian, Missy wants a winner, and Brian will determine the winner based on whether we have swayed him to read it or not.
That works
or
too.
Sam. Or Sam. If I've swayed Sam, that wins too.
Yeah, well, that's not fair because she loves this vampire stuff.
Yeah,
Relevant.
he's gonna. Missy's arguing to Brian. Come on, he's like, I'll give it to her. She wins. Damn it, you're all to persuade yourself.
All right, so I guess we'll get started off with a little brief synopsis. Do you want to do that, Joel, or do you want me to?
Actually, if I don't mind.
Okay.
What I want to kind of do is, first and foremost, I want to get the person's opinion who's most familiar with this book. If you could, because what I kind of want to do is I want to give like a spoiler-free section for our audience. So those who are actually interested in picking up the book can kind of get a general synopsis of what it's about, and then get each of your guys' opinion on whether or not you would recommend this book to a friend.
Okay.
So
you want to do that one? Because you know it better than any of us, because you've listened.
Yeah. So, Missy, if you want to, if you were writing the synopsis on the back of the book or like on the inside cover, how would you best describe this book without going into heavy spoiler territory?
Yeah. So I like the way that I pitch it to a lot of like my friends, or I did back when I was more obsessed with it, was like if I could have like picked a book that was already written that I would want to write, it's this one, right? Mm-hmm. It's really rich detail. The world building is just fantastic. And she is just a really smart, like, the author Deborah Harkness is a classically trained historian, so she creates these rich, deep worlds built on actual details from that she studied for decades now. And so it's the story about a girl who is
the story of a girl.
Yes, or I should say a woman, a young woman. But so she is a bishop. So if you know anything about witch lore, the bishops, proctors, all of those were very key players in the Salem witch trials. So she carries a very strong name, but she's inept. She's never been able to learn magic, and because of it, she's kind of shunned it. And instead, she's devoted her whole life to studies and how to prove how magic essentially isn't real. And she finds herself kind of in this intrigue. She pulls up a manuscript that just happens to be
spoiler free.
No, it is. That is like.
I'm pretty sure that's like straight off the back cover.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
You're right. That would be why.
She pulls up a book. And it turns out that it is not, that it's more than meets the eye, but she doesn't know. And so they spend the rest of this book trying to find it. And she finds herself in the middle of, a fight between witches, demons, and vampires. And because she doesn't know anything about the world, she's just kind of as useless as a human. Mm-hmm. But will they prevail in the end? Will she turn into a vampire? Turn in next week.
It's worse. It's worse what ends up to with her.
Very clearly, you would definitely recommend. I mean, you already have recommended this book to several people. But if you were to say, for example, pitch this not necessarily to a friend, but like to someone who, say, for example, doesn't typically read this genre of book, would you say this is? Yeah, exactly. Would you say that this is a good book to get started on?
It is. Ben was being like a little bitch a couple weeks ago. He was like, "Ugh, you recommended vampire romance." Like, no, this is like vampire romance light. Like, you're not even like, it's the romance is a part of it, but it's not the driving force. The world itself is. It's kind of,
Ben's face. Ben's like super nut. He's like,
I was like, oh, come on. that's like the whole like back 2/3 of the book is like the romance portion. Like there's also other stuff going on.
Missy on this one. Like,
if you want smut, like,
I mean, it's not. I'm not saying it's a smutty vampire book. I'm just saying it is like a core part of the book is it's a romance novel. It's not like it's not erotica.
The romance is there, but the story there's more of a story of like I believe her discovering herself and what she is and the romance is the vampire romance is like kind of in the background, like it's there.
It's all
but like
to black.
if you there's no like hardcore scenes, but like the story is more. It feels like if they took the romance out, the same story could happen. Like it doesn't feel like like in the stories like the Twilight story. You take the romance out of that one, you've got no story. You've got like a girl just like moping around, and then like a werewolf being like, "Hey, how are you doing?"
Sorry, Demonic Rhino 666. We are talking about the book Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness.
But if you do watch the series, you will get very like Twilighty, like that blue light, my camera's not balanced kind of vibes, which I hate. It sort of undermines it and makes it less, in my opinion. But there is a relationship that drives the story forward. I do not believe it is a vampire romance, and it is not.
It is.
It is though. It is though.
It's shelved in the fiction section.
Yeah. No. One of the things I love about the book is the author is her descriptions are amazing. Like I've read the book I think twice, and I feel like I have memories of Oxford. Like I have never been there, but like she's so descriptive. Like you can feel like you're walking the halls. Like she is so good at painting the world that makes you feel like. There was one scene where she's out rowing, and they talk about, the width of the boat, how much, but like she paints the picture of what it's like to be out on the water, and it's almost like you can smell the mist, and feel it on your skin as you're going. She's a marvelous wordsmith. That being said, some of her interpersonal interactions are a little bit awful.
I'm gonna give.
Like you said, the heavy emotional words, which is my favorite criticism, where she's like, the character would, no matter what happens, he goes from like stoic calm to suddenly furious.
Yeah.
Like,
You could see the cold fury burning behind his eyes.
Like, this man is the most unstable character I've ever seen, but like, he literally sounds like a tantruming child.
Yeah.
Okay, so Joel, would you recommend this book
I
to...
did.
He did to me.
Like, not only did I recommend it, I recommended it to talk about on this stream.
And then was like, no, that was my wife's idea. Like,
Yeah.
No, it was pandering to my
Yeah, and then made it sound like I was the one that had the idea.
Yeah. No, you definitely got it with this.
So, in my opinion, I don't know if I'd necessarily recommend this book to anyone. With that said, it was a really well-written book that I did. It was fairly immersive. It's just there's certain elements of it that we'll probably get into in a little bit here that I found frustrating and or annoying throughout. Like every time she like the author, she kind of has like two lanes that she goes in with the book, and one of them is like her world building and scene setting, which is very very good, which I highly enjoyed. But then the character, like the characters that she wrote, I had a lot of trouble actually liking. So it was like very much a dichotomy between the two. So it's like every time it like a bunch of interpersonal relationship stuff started happening in the book, I would get frustrated, and then other times when I'm like, oh yes, I can smell the old book smell in Oxford right now. I'm like, I was enjoying it, or like, I can feel this damp castle. You're muted, Joel, or. But it was like that was one of the hard things. So I don't know if I would necessarily recommend this book, but that was my thoughts on it.
When you pick a book to read, what drives you? So like I pick a book and it's relationships, like those interpersonal relationships drive me.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not invested in it, I'm out. Like y'all are nerds, and you're like,
yeah.
Dragons?
She can't do any Terry Pratchett solely because it starts out with the Great Attune.
Okay.
Like it doesn't make sense.
She has nothing.
It doesn't have to make sense. The vampire lore in this book doesn't make sense. Like,
It's not a giant turtle.
yeah.
Did they ever?
And the entirety of Discworld is like a political commentary on stuff going on in like British history. It's like
turtle. That's
on the back of a turtle, but we lose you at turtle.
It's like that space whale episode in Doctor Who. I hate it.
That's the best one. That's a great one.
It's a good episode.
Oh, whoa. If you're gonna say that the space whale episode was the best one, I'm going to have to question your
So you can suspend your disbelief for Doctor Who, but you can't suspend it for the Great Atuin.
No, he said he liked this.
I don't like
that episode.
I like stories of the giant space creatures, like giant interstellar dwelling creatures. Like I love those. I think they're super cool.
Well, yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I like a good creature feature, but like that as like your favorite episode, like whoa,
no,
hey,
that's incorrect. It's not.
now I'm just starting to like look at this one.
I apologize. I would like that from the record and just say I enjoy it.
I would say that's a very sad episode because you find out that the whale is being like severely mistreated and enslaved by the shipbuilding company.
Not mistreated at the end of it.
It gets freed.
To the people.
But humans suck, right? We live to subjugate others, and even though they willingly help us, we're like, free will is.
I don't know. I feel like this one has completely subjugated us. Like I think like we do whatever he tells us.
That's true.
Well, okay. Getting back to the book a little bit, because I don't want to get too off topic on Doctor Who, because then I'll just like take over on Doctor Who.
Yeah, no, we're tit for tat on that one. It would be a long.
Well, and I've only watched through the third Doctor.
Oh, that's fine.
You also watched.
No. So the modern, but in the classic, I've only watched through the third Doctor.
I mean, that means you've seen Invasion of the Dinosaurs, so you're cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I also went to Cardiff and saw the Doctor Who experiment. I have all the pictures, but neither here nor there. We can get back to the book.
She's being bougie right now.
We will return in the Who-mobile later, but for the moment. Oh man, yeah, that fucking Who-mobile. Anyway, so Missy, as someone who is got a lot of experience with romance books, this particular genre, you're of course probably aware of the
I want to clarify that it's not classified as romance.
It is classified as fiction.
Fiction with romance elements in it.
So the reason that is an important distinction is because a lot of people, men and women, not like gender specific, but a lot of people hear romance and they automatically discredit it as not being worthy of their time. So like, they
your literature showing.
I know. I picture these like bodice rippers, these things that are just damsel in distress, and like while it like the genre has come a long way, but this is actually classified as fiction.
Yeah.
Ben.
Okay, so there's a clear distinction between something like this and something like the Omegaverse, for example.
I don't ask what the Omega.
I don't know what that means.
Oh, okay. Never mind then.
Wait, is it who's the author that writes the series? Is it?
Oh, the Omegaverse is done by different people, but like it's kind of like a shared romantic like universe with like fictional creatures like werewolves and stuff like that. Anyway, what I was going to ask was with romantic elements within this, if you were to like kind of give this thing a rating on like the spice scale, where would you put this? Would you
Oh, it's like it's like a 1 on the spice scale. It's like
a 1.
It's not like
it's all fake and black. Like it's like there's a couple things, but like
it's all very safe and whatnot. Does that continue through the series? Because I know that this is. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it does. It does continue pretty much through the series, as it's there is the romance. It does progress in the relationship between the main character and the vampire, but it does not ever get to like anything really heated. You know, I think there's some tame, touching moments. Like,
heavy petting.
Yeah.
Bundling, if you will.
Yeah.
The difference of in this one, as opposed to any other like story of this kind of genre, is like it is undeniable that the female character is the most powerful character in the book. Like as you start learning about this, that they are like as you go through the series.
Mary Sue.
I know. Yes.
No, it's not Mary Sue. It's actually it could be if it would have started where it ended. Yes, but like the journey is kind of interesting.
Yeah, but we ended the book with her being are we like gonna leave go into spoiler territory now?
Not
just yet. Okay.
Not just yet. I want to give a little bit more, like context to people who might want to read it before we get into spoiler territory. But you're saying that like there's clearly a moment where like you obviously feel that she's kind of a Mary Sue character.
Mm-hmm.
You feel like she's almost like a
100%.
So she, by that term, you mean that she's a kind of a self-insert character, or that she's just kind of like, go ahead.
I felt Missy apparently disagrees, but I felt she wasn't necessarily a full self-insert, but from the standpoint of you have that sort of like power creep where like every time she encounters a problem, all of a sudden she discovers a power that allows her to like overcome that obstacle like with flying colors. And she's like,
yeah, she has absolutely no control over it. The difference
doesn't matter. She still is able to like it's like the same problem like Naruto faces. Like every time like you think Naruto's like or like Goku's gonna like lose, all of a sudden like boom, they're like power boost and like beat the odds. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's a lot of yelling. Their throat gets sore, stuff like that. No.
Yeah.
But,
it's answered later. Like it's annoying.
That's fair.
Like if you're a person and if someone came to me right now and said you are a witch, I would devote my entire life to finding out how to control my powers, right? Like
yeah, and then the entire time she's like, no. It's like she took like reject, like if we're talking about like the hero's journey, like she took like rejecting the call way too long. Like
yes, but like none of like she wasn't able to do anything, right? Like she couldn't I don't
think she ever like tried.
She did a little bit, but like her aunt wasn't very patient with her. Her parents were dead. Like you kind of get it, right? But like like it's you kind of get it a little bit, but like the fact that she's like magic isn't real or nothing, like like all of this stuff, or like it's stupid, right?
Yeah.
Like.
Well, she was essentially trying to prove to herself and her family that she could live her life without magic, since all it's done is hurt her entire life. So, like, I get that.
It is like it's explained later, the power thing, right? Like you get little nuggets, and then when it all comes out, you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
I mean,
but you don't
narratively, I understood, but we'll get into it once we're in spoiler land because I'm about to pop off here.
In that case, going back to Missy for a quick second.
Ben's gonna read that whole series.
He's about to pop off like Thug Life, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's good as showing.
It's Rockford.
Yeah. So,
considering Ben's about to pop, I don't want to press him more than I. So Missy, going back to you for a quick second. I read some people talking about this book, and even I think the author herself kind of alludes to it as Harry Potter for adults sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I gotta be honest with you. When it comes to Harry Potter, I was never a big fan of Harry Potter. Primarily for me, because I didn't like the magic system. It was, in my opinion.
Wait, how do you feel about break bills? The magicians?
Yeah.
I'd take Harry Potter over break bills any day. There's a lot more sex in break bills, though.
Yeah,
I'm here and there about it.
It was all like hand gestures and
Yeah.
semantics. Not just gestures. There was one person I remember in The Magician. We're gonna stop at this one. Where they cast a spell to unlock a door, and it took a minute and a half of her being like, and you're like, and it was hard concentration. I was like, this is stupid.
Well, the reason why I think that there's a bit of a difference there, and something that is hard to pin down as to which is better, is because they're made for different mediums. You know what I'm saying? In the books for Harry Potter, it's written one way because it's in book format, whereas with the magicians, it's a TV show and whatnot, and so you have a different
book format too.
Well, that's true. I guess it did start it out as a book, yeah. But
it went away from the series as it progressed, but yeah, it did.
Yeah.
I don't know shit about the book series. I don't know if it's the same kind of hand gestures and stuff. Ugh.
Either way,
which is weird though, because the movie Merlin, it was all hand magic, and he was awesome.
Oh, Merlin, wasn't that
with
the
Sam
one?
Neill?
Yeah.
That was cool. Yeah, no, not the TV show. The TV show was dumb. I'll still watch the shit out of it though.
He's supposed to be all-knowing, and then he's portrayed as this bumbling idiot. How do you even get past that? Fundamentally, it is wrong.
Because it was Merlin as a child. Get it together.
He was born all-knowing.
Right.
That's in the story.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were there at his birth.
Have you
It's
read
part of Arthurian legend.
Yeah, I know. No.
Okay, so
Clearly you didn't know it. He met a dragon in a cave. And was trained by a druid when he was cleaning the king's shit. That's how he learned everything. Yeah. Get it together.
we're getting off topic again. We have limited time.
We actually have more time than ever before. Go ahead. So are we now in spoiler territory?
No.
I think
I
he's
was gonna
got
ask
one.
Missy whether how would you describe the magic system in this world? Is it more deep, kind of ritualistic sort of magic? Is it kind of that kind of quick, Harry Potter kind of magic, where it's you say a quick phrase and it just kind of happens, sort of thing? Where would you put this on a scale of magic?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's innate. It's traditional, right? So she's drawing the line from the families that were prosecuted, and burned at the stake, and she's drawing that line to modern day times, right? So you, obviously not all families are going to have that strong origin, but they can trace back their ancestors to, one of those original witches, whether they were burned in America, Scotland, whatever. So it's a traditional, right?
There's
they spell books and stuff.
I would say there's a mixture of both. There's these families. There's these family grimoires where you have these witch lines that have they have to learn. There's rituals that they learn and perform, but there's also an innate parts to it's all about bloodlines and what powers you inherit to another degree as well. So
brings up an interesting question. If a lot of this magic is inherited, it's then follows chain of reason that like not everybody would like. For example, you couldn't just learn magic.
No,
This is something you have to be born with.
No,
Yeah.
You're born. So you're turned a vampire, but you're born a witch or demon.
Yeah,
Or
it's
human.
it's very clear that there are 4 species. That's demon, human, vampire, and witch.
There are no werewolves. Like there are no like other mythical creatures. It is just those 4.
There might be. We just haven't talked about it in the book yet.
It's probably just going to be explained away as being werewolves or just like some other like vampire dude that went a little bit too ham. You know.
Yeah.
If werewolves ever get brought up in this book series.
Yeah, but it was as far as like my opinion of the magic system is, at least the main character Diana, her power seems to be more like an innate. Like it's very much an unconscious.
Well, it's based off of her emotional state.
Yeah.
Yeah, if she like tries to like control it.
Smiling for all big. Like you could just tell that hurt Ben to say it, and you're just like so happy about it.
Why? Because I actually like processed the book. Like, I mean, I did like I gave it the old college try. Come on.
No, it's your look. So I've read it all, right?
Yeah.
So like, that smile was for spoilers.
Oh, okay. Well, from reading the first book, it's based off of her emotional state and how she can channel certain, like when she feels certain, like can channel certain emotions, she manifests different powers, essentially, in the first book.
It's less when it's when she feels the emotions, but it's not in her control.
Yeah,
right?
it's need based.
So,
yeah.
You know, she summons the witch water because she's out of control. Like
And she's sad.
There's little spells that are in her control, but the thing that
but not.
No, like in the very beginning where she does the watcher, and she does that, and then when she like wants a book that's too high up, she doesn't want to climb and get
But
it.
she didn't mean to.
Yeah.
Like, it was.
She did. She started doing it later, though.
She actually held her hand out, and it fell into her hands.
Yeah.
So like, there were times. Oh, shut up! It hit Matthew. It didn't fall into her hands. It hit a person standing close to her because her aim sucked. I apologize. So she's read it much more than I have. But the funniest thing that we're not at spoilers yet. I will wait till spoilers. Till it's announced spoiler time.
Well, I'll tell you what. What we'll do right now is why don't we go ahead and take our first, like our break. We'll get like 5-10 minutes or whatnot. Everyone can like get a drink or something. And when we come back, we'll jump into spoiler territory. How's that sound?
We can do that.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. We'll be back in 5 or 10, ladies and gentlemen. And we're back.
The squeaking really adds the ambiance that we desperately need.
Bingley's in.
Yeah, he's
ready for the spoilers.
He's ready to go.
Speaking of which, we're going into spoiler territory, so if you have not read the book and you have plans to read the book, but you don't want to be spoiled, have any kind of spoilers or anything, I suggest you stop watching the stream now. We thank you for your support. We thank you for your view. And as always, you can go to our YouTube and check out any of our episodes that you want on demand. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and get into spoiler territory now. How exactly do you defend this book, Missy? Like, would people like come at you like Ben up there and they're like, hey, this book sucks?
I will say, I have never said the book sucks. I just said I don't like certain points of it.
So he's never told you to your face that the book sucks then. Okay, got it, right. So, no, I mean, like, Ben, you clearly have, like, you're clearly the dissenting opinion in this particular, like, panel. What would you say are your biggest gripes about the book?
So, my biggest problem, so like I've said previously, I love the sort of how magic plays into this book. I like how the world is built. I like a lot of like the detail that goes into it. So it was a very like easy to consume book. My problem with it is with the actual characters in the book. Like
everything about it.
He's like
everything.
Yeah, the actual like I found like the
Star
main
Wars dialogue.
Yeah.
That's what he's trying to say.
Yeah, it was like so like
it's everywhere. Shut up.
It was like very much like Star Wars sort of like dialogue. It was very like any of the interpersonal relationships that the main character had with anyone, like it was just didn't feel like I don't know how like natural in any way, because there were a lot of times like there was a number of different times where like she would meet a character who would have like a dislike of her, either because of who she is, because of like what
he's speaking on the vampire discussion.
Yeah, because of like who she is, because of like her being a witch or what have you, and they would like basically almost express like an intense hatred of her, but then like a chapter later, all of a sudden they're like best buds. Like,
yeah.
Okay.
Not saying you're wrong.
Yeah.
I'm just saying you're incorrect.
Have you ever been around academics? Do they know how to interact with each other?
I'm an engineer. I am around people all the time that don't know how to interact with other human beings.
That's my point, right? Like,
but I don't.
Nerds,
but I don't.
Like they're like alchemy, and then you have like historians who study the mating habits.
Did you not stop for 1 second and appreciate his response?
I know.
For people don't know how to interact with people. I'm an engineer.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean like that doesn't.
No,
but
right.
It doesn't cause me like, because I don't expect people to like react warmly to each other all the time, but it's like you don't go from like hating the person to like loving the person the next day.
Who are you talking about? Are you talking about
Isabeau, yeah. And then Miriam does it.
But I'm gonna go on with Ben.
And then the aunt does the same turnaround. Sorry.
Like that was so quick. So
the aunt does the same turnaround on Matthew.
Yeah.
Like
Brian is mediating.
I'm just trying to like get you guys, because like I can't hear all of you guys at once. It's gonna be like really confusing for the audience. So like just like Ben, go ahead and finish your point, and then Joel will get
there's multiple different instances where like characters make like very like intense like complete 180s on each other like within the span of like 24 hours, like, and it's frustrating because I'm like, this doesn't happen. If I like have this visceral gut I hate this person, I don't change my opinion a day later, you know, like.
Had any enemies to lovers novels been okay?
I didn't. You were cutting out for the first part. What did you say?
Nothing.
So obviously, you haven't read any enemies to lovers novels.
No, I have not, because that would not be something I'm interested in.
Okay,
so,
well, Joel,
But it is now.
go ahead and give
He's
your
like-
opinion.
He's like, hold on, and then he yells to Mary. No, I support, like, Ben is right. There were some very jarring changes in, just, your face is just amazing, and you're like, no, I disagree. Like,
I'm gonna get to the other crux of why
What got me in this one is, again, I agree with Ben. The world building is beautiful. It is amazing, but I feel like she just took the emotions and was like, what is the most powerful version of this one, like, and use that one.
Yeah.
And I think her emotional, like what you described, the emotional status of the character, you know, like, you like eggs, and I see cold fury behind his eye. Like, just the most simplistic things is like setting Matthew off, which is the vampire character. And like, she asked him, what do you like to eat? When she finds out that vampires eat, like they can actually eat food and drink blood. She's like, well, what do you like to eat? And the next sentence is, his face was filled with
rage.
And you're like, and I'm imagining in my mind's eye when I'm reading this story, like, she's like, so what do you like to eat? He's like just bristles and like white knuckling at the table, and you're like, what in the hell?
It's like asking a vegan if they would like a steak, like.
Yeah, and she uses these like powerful, like heavy loaded words that I feel make the character sound unnecessarily volatile, and not in like an endearing or like character building way, like just like a raging toddler type way. And I to me, it's
that was the other part of it, was like the character Matthew, who is like the vampire love interest in the book,
was also 1,500
yeah,
years old.
so he was basically turned into like a vampire at the time when Clovis the First converted to Christianity, so like 1,500 years ago. And like you're honestly wanting me to believe that this Git dude, who is like apparently prone to like frequent rages whenever someone asks him a question he doesn't like or questions his authority in any way, and anytime someone does that, he flies into like a barely controlled rage, and you're telling me that he's hidden the fact that he's a vampire and he's hyper intelligent, and he's like hidden the fact he's a vampire for 1,500 years and is like but he has the emotional intellect of a toddler, like.
Yeah.
Maybe. Okay. Well, so
We've talked enough. It's Missy's turn.
Yeah. So, there is one thing I want to ask Missy. They brought up kind of like the, I guess what they would call is like the sudden 180 when it comes to like, you know, character building and whatnot. I'm wondering how much of that might be on the writer's part, because like a writer, whenever like they're trying to like create a super smart like Tony Stark kind of character, they can only work with the knowledge that is within their own base. Like that's how you get like a lot of the Star Trek like techno babble, where it doesn't actually make sense, but the writers are trying to write characters that are smarter than they are, and therefore they can't like actually do it, but they kind of still need it to do it for the story purposes. Do you think that that plays into it, or would you say that it's completely unjustified what they said altogether?
Their points are valid. Everyone is allowed their own opinion and not.
Well, certainly, but are they objectively wrong in their opinion? Is what I'm asking. They have their opinion, but are they just wrong in it?
No, so like so if you think about it, like we didn't talk about this. So back I forget exactly how many years ago, but like let's say 2,000 years ago, once humanity started to like kind of notice something was wrong, they developed a covenant, right, which forbade intermixing between the species. And so the covenant was upheld by the congregation, which had 3 people from each species on it. So it's like their ruling council. So you have this like thousands of years tradition that you can't intermingle.
You can't even like have friendships with other, like a witch cannot be friends with the demon and such. Like it's like to the point where like they've been enforcing this for so long that there's like racism against each other because of it. So
they have segregation. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
Like so you have this, and then you have this relationship, and Isabu has hated witches forever, right? Like, you know, she has this strong thing. I get my books mixed up, but you know, she's at one point, spoiler, like hunted them, right? Like she is like
she was a Nazi hunter, which was I actually liked. I was like, that's badass.
No, like so you know, like you have this, and then you have your son, because Isabu is Matthew's maker. So her son brings a witch. She's already hated her. There's this law that forbids her. She should, by all rights, turn her over to the witches because she's their responsibility. But she's trying to navigate what's right for her species,
but
what's for her son.
Yeah,
right?
But also vampire society is extremely patriarchal and is led by the son. So like whatever the men decide to do, she has to follow, which was an interesting one that gets brought up.
There's like, it is the 180s weird, right? Would you be able to, after, you know, so long as hating witches, would you be able to turn that around after just a couple days? That's unlikely. But if you look at it from the perspective of a mother who's trying to do right by her son, from a friend who's trying to be supportive of, you know, their like friend, like you guys are looking at it purely objective, and you're not taking into account like the relationship and the complexities of like what those interpersonal relationships would be.
Okay, so they're objectively wrong, is what you're saying. Got it, yeah.
So they're objectively wrong.
But there's more. Like, it's not.
Oh, okay. Please elaborate on how much more wrong they are.
Hammer home the point on how terrible they are. Let me continue.
Yeah, but like, it's more than just as what's presented on the paper, right? And it's how you're reading it, and it's how you're perceiving.
Kind of nerdy here.
Well, okay. Let me shift gears a little bit here, because Ben brought up another point about the vampire character and how he seemed to like fly off the handle when kind of like any kind of like question was posed to him or whatnot. And as someone who has read the entire series, something I want to ask you is that maybe a product of him living for so long that he's already heard all these questions, and so it's just like everyone who's always like met him like is always asking the same damn things all over again? Or is it more like this is just how he's always been? Like, is he just so annoyed at this point that he's flying off the handle, or is it like, no, just this is just how he is?
Is this directed to you or to all of us?
Yeah, no, to Missy, because she's read like, you know, everything.
It's a little bit of everything, right? So like, if spoiler, in the second book, do we care about second books? What spoilers?
I'm not gonna read them. The rest of them, no, I'm not. Unless you make me, I will not read the rest of them.
So he has blood rage, right? Which is essentially like an uncontrolled thing, and so it's anger. He has these outbursts. He has to learn how to control them. It's genetic. Isabeau was a carrier, but Matthew got it. So like you have this thing, right? But it's also like he's fighting again, and back to the covenant, back to the congregation, right? He's attracted to this person. He's fighting it because everything is wrong. So she's asking.
Forbidden love is like, what you're saying.
Like,
yeah. There. And Ben's like vindicated. It is.
She's asking him what your favorite meal is, and he's like, you should like. It takes him off guard because it's this complex relationship, right? Like they're falling in love. They're gonna get married and become mates, everything, right? So like, but all of this is wrong, and so you have like he's fighting against his odds, and his nature is to be aggressive.
Okay. Interesting.
My other problem with Matthew is that, so like I understand he's 1,500 years old, so his ideas on the relationship dynamics are a little bit outdated. And my other problem with Matthew was it was like half of the stuff he was doing, yes, it's based off of instinct and this is my vampire blood talking and blah blah blah, but it's like it hits all of the points of like red flags of an abusive relationship the entire book, but like somehow like Diana tries to push it off as like, oh, it's just because it's his instinct to be protective and isolate me from my like friends and family. that was the part that I was like, okay, like Matthew is straight up a freaking toxic person. Like I couldn't.
But like, who doesn't like the bad boy?
He knew that.
No, it wasn't.
Definitely.
No. We're not talking about bad boy because he has tattoos and rides a Harley. We're talking about bad boy because he's a freaking abusive asshole that just like at any point he just decides to like be a dickhole and just like fly off the handle at people and just like say like, I'm sorry, it's just my instinct.
My nature. That's
my nature. It's in my nature to be. It's in my nature to be protective. It's in my nature to want to isolate, like protect you from anyone, regardless of their relationship to you.
I vote for the villain. Like I'm mad, genuinely mad when the heroine isn't with him. Like so, I'm not great at perceiving red flags. So I'll give you that.
The other one is he's put up as this fucking badass that can take on anything, and the first real fight he gets into, he gets his ass destroyed. He gets literally eviscerated by this other vampire. And it wasn't even like a surprise attack or anything. He just stood there and did nothing while she like ripped his throat out and punched a hole in his heart. Like, what the fuck?
Juliet was made to like she.
So what? So what? Like what? There's no explanation for that. There's like, was he hypnotized? Was he just, or did he just like stood there and took it?
Because
and he's like
it's not her fault. Like it's not her fault. But
go ahead.
No, I mean I don't really like.
Well,
it's a plot point to move the story forward that comes back in the second book. Yeah. In my opinion, like that's all I got.
I think the jarring thing of this one is like for somebody who's like always like raging and always like shown as this powerful character, and everything he does is so amazing, and they talk about how powerful and strong he is, and how Diana's impressed by everything he does. It's just jarring to see somebody come up and be like, and he's done.
Like, pop, 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 pop. Bitch slap, like this bitch like showed up out of nowhere and bitch slapped him a couple times and he's dead laying on the ground after he's been like portrayed as the greatest vampire warrior ever.
Yeah.
And like he hasn't even like, so like why does she still have power on him? He hasn't seen her in 300 years. Like,
he pities her. Like,
so what? Doesn't he like? I thought his vampire protective instincts get angry when Marcus steps close to her, like his son or Isabeau. Like all of his like his own kindred can't come like close to Diana at all, but he can't raise a finger in defense of himself.
He pities her above all else. He feels bad for her. She was she's this unhinged, crazy person who was created to love him, like, to be his perfect mate, to manipulate him, and, like, literally, wasn't it Gerard or whatever.
Yeah, Gerard doesn't like Matthew de Clermont, and he wants to like create a thing that's his like. So like you're saying because it's his kryptonite. That was not made clear in the books. It was just this bitch showed up, stabbed the shit out of him, and then he almost died, and Diana had to make a deal with the goddess in order to save his life.
Yeah,
that tracks.
It's a plot point.
That tracks.
It was a bad plot point. That's what I'm saying.
You will have to be doing deals with God. What you did.
It's a plot point. It advances it. It gets you closer to the next thing that's important.
It was badly done, is all I'm saying. Like if it would have been like he got taken, like I would have allowed it if it would have been just like he's in a place where he's like relaxed, he's not expecting any threat, and then all of a sudden like sneak attack, poof, stab through the heart. I would have accepted that, but instead they're in this standoff, and all of a sudden like this bitch rips his throat out of nowhere after they're like, he knows the threat's there, he knows what's gonna happen, and he just sits there and takes it.
After you're saying that it had poor conveyance.
Yeah, after 20 hours of talking about how badass this guy is. Like, that's my problem with it.
Like, I don't, like, he never was, like, a badass.
No. She talked constantly about how strong and powerful he was, and how massive he was, and how awesome he was. And then the first time the first time he gets in a fight, first and only time he gets in a fight, he gets his ass handed to him.
Just
mercy.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, I don't.
It was not.
That part, I just heard so little in my brain that I'm like, man.
The part that literally Ben fixated on.
I know.
Ben's like, this is the most important part. You're like, he got beat up. It's fine. Everybody
No. You don't like push this guy forward as like this you don't push this guy forward as Superman and then like kill him, as like basically murder him instantly in the first and only fight he was in the entire book. The thing that every
most important, biggest man in his life, and you can't tell him different because you are that figure to him. To Diana, she sees Matthew as this savior, as this like
daddy,
person who will kind of help
vampire daddy.
And she does have daddy because her parents were killed in Africa. Yep.
Yeah, she only grew up with female figures, right? So again, you're like to her.
So much worse with that.
That's her perspective. Is that he has been there and saved her.
But he hasn't.
Kind.
The only thing he's done has been like showed up when she's like in a place of distress and then like whisked her away to France. Like every other time he's failed to protect her.
He protected her against the witches. Like, they did take her from the chateau, but like that was because she left. Right, like
because they bundled too hard.
They got it on. No, it's just that part registered so little to me that like I'm sorry it made you mad.
Well, that was like that was my thing. It was like when you like I said, like I know where I'm like I keep hammering on it, but it's like he's been played up, like he's like stared down other like stronger vampires and stronger witches than this person. He basically like when they were at the Bodleian, he like basically like intimidated every angel witch, and she's gone.
No. It was the puppies were.
So like basically like she like up until this point like he was at the Bodleian and like there was like 50 some odd like angels, witches, and demons hanging around, and he basically intimidated them all into submission. But like that doesn't that like the.
He's talking just about like the character just themed it just.
So like they like put this up like he's this person that just by his mere presence will like like because of like how other people know about him. Like they won't touch him, but like I get it. Like Juliet doesn't care, but like you would think there'd be something to back up how powerful he is if like all of these witches and demons and vampires like back down just by him growling.
Lived 1,500 years. You fucking want to die. Like, you don't like.
No. Earlier on in the thing, she was like, he told Diana that he's finally found a reason to live because of her, but like he's not willing to protect her. Like he knows Juliet's presence will be.
No. The whole book unravels at just one point.
No, I mean I get it doesn't, but like it was a pivotal moment in the book. Like.
Yeah. For me, the relationship drives it. For this, I would hazard a hypothesis that it is the fights that drive it for you. The
right.
Conflict, yeah.
So like I think the other big, so like you're right. Like there's the conflict that a lot of times drives the book for me. So like
that's why this matters to you, and I don't give a shit.
Right.
I like the story for me pushes forward, good or bad. I like the story.
So I feel like you can't have like momentum in a story without conflict, and I feel like the one thing that bothered me throughout the book was there's a certain like level of anxiety that is going on throughout the book where you feel like something is about to happen, like it.
I feel that's
and there's never right. So like it's like her. It's Diana's anxiety, obviously, but like the entire book is just like this constant like ratcheting up of this like anxiety of like something's about to happen, and it never does. Like there's like obviously it's like ratcheting up, like oh my god he's gonna kill me, and then it like backs back down, and then blah 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 blah, blah and then backs back down, and then it was like a very slow like. It's like a roller coaster that's like ratcheting up and up and up, and then like every time it like plateaus, it just like plateaus a little bit and like drops back down into like a little valley, and then comes like it never like completely takes it away. It just like keeps climbing without like ever like having any kind of like climactic moment that like resolves the tension, and I think that was what bothered me.
Like it's a series, you get it throughout. It's the whole thing is woven together really.
Right. I get that it's 3 different books, but I feel like there should still be like I've read like trilogies before, and typically there's a conflict within the like a given book that resolves itself at some point. But it's just like the entire time is just ratcheting on the tension for me without any kind of like I don't know, payoff. like
but not everything has to have this like dramatic battle scene.
I know, I'm not asking for a dramatic battle scene. I'm just saying like I understand we read books for different reasons, I guess, but like
that's what like so people like when you said what would I say to people who tell me they hate it? Great, that's fine. You read different kind of books. Like yeah. I don't feel the need to like convert someone. I tell Joel all the time we are allowed to have independent interests. Just because you love D&D doesn't mean I need to. Like,
but you don't. But see, the problem is that you won't entertain our interests in turn, Melissa.
Yeah. Well, I didn't ask you to read this book. You guys were like, "Listen, I'm gonna blackmail this bitch into this."
We didn't blackmail you. We just said and asked.
Yeah. No. You know.
All right. Brian is moderating.
Yeah. Let's because Missy, I think you were trying to make a point there. You keep getting kind of like cut off before you
I'm sorry.
like finish your point. It's okay. It's just that your mic is super overpowering. So like whenever you say anything, it's like their mic cuts out and I can't hear a damn thing they say.
Yeah.
People read for different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ben was looking at it for a conflict, for some sort of resolution. You're looking at it like in the Hunger Games, Katniss comes back and she wins, right? Like you know you have something, right? Like he said earlier, his character, the Mary Sue thing, right? You have this. In some ways, she's a new adult or young adult or whatever you want, however old she is. Like that sort of trope light, right? Because I don't fully agree that she's Mary Sue or whatever it is, like but I think it's just people come at it from different angles, and if you're primarily driven by a conflict and you want that sort of big battle scene that there's a good versus evil and everyone prevails, but this is a system that they're trying to understand why it's falling apart, and it's more complex than just one thing that might peak. And so you have this whole system, this whole conflict that's going over 3 books, that then you get the resolution, or you see, how it comes to play, or those things. And so it's not a traditional, like, whatever.
Right. And if we talk about like Lord of the Rings, like you have a steady like ratcheting up of the like stakes, but you still have like climaxes where like the dramatic tension is relieved, and I feel like that never like turns off for the entire time.
Someone who is highly anxious and lives with just a baseline of anxiety, that doesn't bother me.
I don't. Yeah, fair.
Okay. Ben, did you like the movie The Dark Knight?
I did.
Okay, is that not one of those films where like there's a constant like thing of tension that just kind of keeps building and building?
Right.
I mean, especially during the third act,
Right, but I would say like there is still like a pressure release valve that happens at some point. He like captures the joke. Yeah, he like at the end of. Are you talking about like throughout the trilogy?
No, I'm talking about just the
Dark Knight. Yeah,
just the Dark Knight.
Because
like in the third act of the Dark Knight, everything just keeps building, and I kind of think that like you get like a moment where it's like, okay, but like it never actually stops. You know what I'm saying? Like the whole third act is just like
right, yeah. But at the same time, there's different like actual like fake like pressure relief valves that happen and like cut that off a little bit.
I don't know. I gotta think that you're on the bias for this one.
I've never seen it.
That's okay. It's fine. I'm just trying to put it into terms that I think Ben would understand.
No, like I get what you're saying, but like yes, there's like I'm not against like the constant rise of action. It's just like, but like at the same time, like with the Dark Knight, there's always something happening. But like with this book, there's always the threat of something happening that never like comes to fruition.
But it's also politics, right? That's their government. Like
yeah.
All sitting and talking and saying big words, and then like everyone else is trying to figure it out.
I don't know.
Yeah, like you're entitled to your opinion.
He's looking for. I feel, Ben, like you're looking for the hard conflict in a story that's more about self-discovery.
Yeah, that's okay.
You're looking for like a fight scene in a library, essentially.
Well, like they like I said, they hype up how badass Matthew is, and like even when Diana is captured, they show up when like none of the witches are around and like take her back. Like
he's like hell bent to get this point out. But in the story, as we said in the very beginning, Diana Bishop is without a doubt the most powerful character in this book. By the third book, she is hands down the most powerful character. The story for me, because she likes the relationships, you like the conflict. I like the story. Like any story, good or bad, that's what I love, is the story. So where is this journey taking? And it's a story to me about a woman who was raised, who was told she was a witch, magic killed her parents, she doesn't want anything to do with it, and then finds out that not only does she use magic, because you remember in the very beginning of the book, she kept being like, I've only used magic 3 times in so many years.
Yeah,
or whatever.
I've only used it. This is the only the 3rd time I've used it this year.
But then you find out after he's talking to Matthew and these other people that she uses it literally every moment of her life.
Yeah, constantly.
Everything
yes.
she does is just seeped in magic, and so she's like figuring out who she is, where she's going, and then she gets Matthew, who's a thing that is made obviously some kind of magic. And so she's discovering this whole thing. And it's more like the new thing, is what I look at it as. Is that not that Matthew is the most powerful character. He is definitely a powerful character that she sees, but he's also a new thing that she has to figure out. And I think it's more the journey of her, like, accepting this world exists. Yes, she knows they exist, but she's kind of been like, over there. I don't want demons near me. I don't want vampires near me. Witches are my family, but like, we're not going to talk about it. But the reality of it is like she's finding this world, realizing she's an active participant in it, and then is now accepting it. And I feel like that's the story I take of Diana Bishop's journey through all of this. And to me, I don't find the fact that Matthew, I mean, it is hilarious that he does get like bodied in like 1 or 2 hits, which I find funny, but like to me, it doesn't detract from the story because he's facing another vampire. It's not like he got walked up, some person just hit him with a baseball bat, and he's like, well, that's my weakness, and falls over. Like, it is a specific series. You have no sound on your microphone. It is like a series of events. It's just like Superman. He does his thing, and he fought Doomsday and died. Like, but that was a character designed to kill Superman.
Yeah.
So he did.
Healing
it's not like
coma.
Batman came up and like pimp slapped him and he fell over. Like there is a matching of this. It's just the buildup of Matthew was pretty intense. But also, I think it's because she's just finally accepting that Matthew is a vampire and is the first vampire she's interacted with.
Yeah.
So, but to me, I don't find a break in this story. I don't
What
find like
about time walking?
Does that go into book 2?
That it's at the end of book 1.
Yeah, already book 2 now.
So
we're going. We're getting close on time here.
Yeah, we got 6 minutes. So
yeah. So what I want to do here first is I kind of want to give my own opinions as an outsider.
Yeah, we've left you out of that part. So Brian, go ahead.
Excellent job moderating, though. By the way. Yeah, I'm very impressed.
What I want to say is that, like, if I'm brought in here to kind of like judge as to whether or not the book is kind of like worth the time, sort of thing, I gotta go with Missy and Joel on this one. If only because I honestly think, Ben, that if this book were geared for your taste, that you would have liked it more. But like someone who's into the political intrigue or the story and world building sort of thing, these two people can find something of value that they want to keep going with the book on. Whereas you like the punch-ups, you like the fights, you like the conflicts. And it sounds like from your opinion, there was a lot of Chekhov's gun going on here, where it's like they build something up and then like someone, decides that they want it. And of course, I can understand where you're coming from on why that, of course, bothers you.
Yeah.
But I do think that, like, if someone is to look at this book objectively and decide whether or not it's worth their time, I think what genre it is and what they're looking for has to be the deciding factor. And so if I'm going to look at this book and say whether or not it's worth someone's time, I'm going to say if you're like Ben and you really like the fights, if you really like the punch-ups, the brawls and whatnot, this is probably not your book. But like they said beforehand, this is a fantasy romance, which means that it's more about the world building and it's more about the romance. And it seems like those two things actually do work well within each other, if only because obviously we've got two people here who like really felt that and resonated with them, so clearly it's got some sort of value.
We never like never. So that's very rare.
Now with the remaining 4 minutes here, Missy, it's very clear that you're very knowledgeable about this book and that you've got a very soft spot for it. What would you say is like your favorite thing about this book in brief?
Oh, that's really hard because the second book is my favorite. So
how about the series, if you will?
Okay.
What about this draws you in terms of like, what it is?
If you're a literary history British nerd, like something of that, right? Like, so I have a master's degree in English. I had a minor in history. Like, so this was my time, right?
What period of history?
Well, so I'd this was a little bit earlier than my time. Like, I wasn't Elizabethan, but I was more like, you know, the 18th and 19th century.
Okay, so
yeah. So, but this is just before, and I studied a lot of it, so it brought a lot of these characters to life, right? So the first book set it up and made you like fall in love with the world, but the second book for me is what makes it, because you go back in time and she's in Elizabethan England, and she meets Queen Elizabeth, she meets the School of Knights, they go to Prague, and Prague at the time was like second, like one of the leading, kingdoms at the time. And so you see John Dee, and you hear in the world, you just like go back in time, and she does such a good job of it, because that's her studies, right? She's a classically trained historian, so it just, her world brought that to life and like made me feel all the feels, right? You feel like you know these characters, and that's what like I fell in love with. So
you felt a kind of a deeper connection to the more historical literary figures.
Yeah, because it spoke to the nerds.
See, that was my favorite parts of the book. Like when she was like, when her and like Matthew were like nerding out about like, wait, you met Bill? You met Will Shakespeare? And he's like, yeah, Bill was like a bit of like, he was a bit of a plagiarizer, but he was a good guy. Like those were my favorite parts of the book, and I wanted more of that. And it just like the others, I think it's just like
reading book two.
He's super reading book two now because
so Christopher Marlowe, who wrote Dr. Faustus, like he's in it, and it's just it's
okay.
So I love it. Like,
can I also say, so like my I was telling my coworker how we were like talking about this book today, and she like showed me the like a there's a TV series about this book series, right? She showed me the actor for Matthew, and I was like viscerally angry.
I was too.
Like I want like the way they talk about him, like the way he's talked about in the book. He's because they constantly refer to like how large and intimidating a figure he is. Like,
yeah.
I'm like the way they talk about him is like you think you're like you think like. In my head, he's almost built up like to be like Halthor Bjornsson, like just this massive mountain of a man, and then they picked this like skinny, like dweeby looking dude, and I was so mad.
You're pandering to an audience who, I agree with you, he is not who I pictured as my Matthew, but you're pandering to an audience who grew up with Matthew Good as the love interest, beginning and chasing more through Abby, so you're pandering to an audience.
Yeah, but like they didn't like. I just like, I was like, this is not a badass like vampire intimidating person. He's just so bad. Sorry.
The show was miscast, but
yeah.
That's neither.
Anyway.
Okay. Anyway, we are coming up on time. So.
We are coming up on time. There's one more question I want to ask Missy real fast. Because clearly, you like the political intrigue, you like the build, you like the world building, you like the story, you like some of the more fantastical elements or whatnot. So the big question that I have for you, this is like my $1 million question. I've been building up to this one for a long time because I've just got to ask you about it. But like, in terms of the things about this book that really get you interested, want you knowing more, want you kind of like, really kind of captivate you. Is there any way I can convince because there's a lot of that in here, and you do.
God, that was so great. That's not D&D. That's Vampire the Masquerade. It's a different game.
Yeah. Vampire the Masquerade is a much more character-driven story with a lot of political intrigue and a lot of supernatural elements.
That was fantastic.
He's had that book sitting there the whole time. Just
when he put his arm out, like I really thought he was gonna pull out like one of the like Victorian Dungeons and Dragons. And he pulled out Vampire the Masquerade. Oh my god, that was so good.
Just one session, Melissa.
Vampire. we've all never, like, vampires are a totally different type of game.
Yeah. Oh, look, the dog has to go out.
That's a no.
That's
That was
okay.
a perfect ending.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Maybe we'll see Melissa in a future Vampire the Masquerade episode, but I highly doubt
Probably
it.
not.
But thanks for watching. As I vehemently said how angry I was about how there was no conflict within the book, and Melissa defended the other aspects that I also enjoyed, and Joel also was on Missy's side. And thank you for moderating for us, Brian. I think that helped keep us on track very well. And we'll see you again on Wednesday for our next session of. Or wait, are we doing the Talk Nerdy this week?
Last Wednesday, correct? Or is it,
Yep.
no?
Well, technically speaking, isn't this Wednesday like the first Wednesday?
It's the
No,
last
it's the
Wednesday.
last Wednesday. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So we'll see you guys again on Wednesday, and we'll be doing a little Talk Nerdy with Brian.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks
Thanks very
everybody,
much.
and we'll see you again next week.